Now, if I were a leftist YouTuber with this accent making videos about capitalism, the government, and bigotry, I probably wouldn't make it that far into the algorithm. You'd most likely expect this accent to be in a video about guns, hunting, homesteading, and about DEI Democrats brainwashing our kids with Satanism. And that's a problem. To a lot of urban liberals and leftists, rural folk are often seen as ignorant, racist, Bible-thumping reactionaries, while urban liberals are seen as soft-spoiled snowflakes who want to corrupt America's values. The portrayal of Southerners and rural Americans in popular media and political rhetoric often relies on a narrow set of stereotypes. The fat beer-drinking redneck embodies ignorance and bigotry, but also self-reliance at the same time. The origin of the word redneck was even based on this contradiction. The term redneck was a derogatory insult aimed at southern/rural white Americans by the higher classes in order to taunt and degrade them. The redneck is referring to the tan laborers and farmers would get working in the sun, which is very similar to the origin of another slur towards Mexicans. Anyways, I've grown up in both northern and southern states, and some of these depictions are true. Same with the liberal ones. The reason why Trump's populism appeals to the South and rural people and a large amount of the working class, even in the suburbs, regardless of zone, is because he knows how to talk to them and what their interests are. A person who grew up in a small, God-fearing town and does manual labor doesn't really care much about police brutality, trans rights, or foreign policy. The same way an urban liberal probably doesn't care that much about the border, blue-collar jobs, and having conservative values be put into legislation. Also, it seems like a lot of Democrats and liberals see the southern states and rural areas as lost causes. There's no reason to go out and talk to them and campaign because, well, they're uneducated and they're just gonna side with Republicans anyway, which is a dog shit method that obviously didn't lead to anything fruitful. If anything, this has alienated Southerners and people in rural areas and driven them farther to the right. It's hypocritical to run on ideas of education and unifying, but you make no attempt in order to do outreach. Now, obviously, I'm not saying you have an obligation to literally debate and argue and try to convince KKK members and literal neo-Nazis that people are human and you shouldn't do genocide, but rather if someone is willing to listen in good faith, or they're just genuinely the victim of propaganda in their environment, you have a good chance to have a mature and logical conversation and tell them that certain ideologies are actually more beneficial to them than they may think. Now, besides the Civil War and two-party politics in the United States, I think there's an underrated component that kind of explains how we got here, and it's country music. Now, let me cook. Country music has arguably changed for the worse. Actually, I won't even say arguably. I think a lot of people are snobs about country music nowadays. Country music has shifted its roots from storytelling and class consciousness to a focus on commodities, trucks, and beer. In its early days, artists like Johnny Cash and Woody Guthrie used their music to address the struggles of the working class, imperialism, and highlighting themes of poverty, heartache, and social justice. If you've grown up in America, you probably know the song "This Land Is My Land, This Land Is Your Land," and it's kind of a nursery rhyme, at least in my experience. But if you actually look at the lyrics, nowadays it would be called woke. There's original recordings where he talks about private property, which basically kind of doubles down on the entire country being for you and me and whoever wants to make a life here. But a lot of people, including me, don't know all this because there's only two lines that are passed around in American pop culture. Johnny Cash also has a pretty progressive discography, including talking about the Vietnam War, Native American genocide, the prison system, and so on.
San Quentin, I hate every inch of you.
So where did it all go wrong? Much like criticisms of hip-hop/rap, as commercial interest took precedence in the genre, the music increasingly leaned into superficial themes that prioritize lifestyles over actual commentary. Like, we've all known a guy or had a neighbor who has an American flag, an F-250, always talking about the good old days, and they have a desk job and they don't do any manual labor. Now, this kind of phase of cosplaying as like lower income rural Americans, like the historical redneck, kind of leads to a shift in social commentary and political beliefs also. Being an exploited, gritty manual laborer coming home to your wife and kids got transformed into driving huge trucks that take a fortune to fill up and drinking beer while flipping off the Democrats. But something that kind of returned to the original roots of country was Richmond, north of Richmond.
Overtime hours for bullshit pay so I can sit out here and waste my life away.
Which blew up on ideas of class consciousness and the emotion of helplessness towards the government. And then he immediately got thrown aside once he didn't want to drink the Fox News Kool-Aid. But then on the other hand, you had a lot of criticisms from the left over his verse where he talks about the obese milking welfare and saying that people paying taxes shouldn't have that money go towards people buying fudge rounds. Now, of course, that's politically incorrect. You could feel how you feel about that line. In my opinion, but this loops back into what I'm talking about with elitism and political correctness. You basically have this overnight sensation, regardless of whether he was astroturfed or not, reaching so many people with a message of political consciousness and class consciousness, and you focus on one verse where he says something politically incorrect that he may be misled about, of like some statistic of like how many people on welfare are obese compared to like people who aren't, and so on, in order to try and quote unquote cancel him or be like, this song is horrible, like nobody should listen to it, he's obviously conservative. Because from Oliver Anthony's perspective, he made something that's focused on average everyday people and the working class, and shitting on both Democrats and Republicans, the rich men north of Richmond, and he has the right and the left coming for him, when this could be an opportunity for the left to actually become fans of him and educate him and get, you know, that content pushed more. The transformation of the image of the redneck illustrates the disconnect of tradition and the adoption of new think between workers and propaganda. Well-off suburbanites cosplay as the gritty rural working class in order to own the libs and return to tradition, and on the other hand, a lot of leftists do a lot of posturing and virtue signaling for the working class, but they're not willing to actually educate or not shit on people who are ignorant or raised a certain way. And I'm glad Tyler Harper gave pushback on people who absolutely hate religious people in the South that are conservative and reactionary, but they have the empathy for people in third world countries and say the Middle East who fall prey to religious fundamentalism due to material conditions or history. And I'm a pretty consistent guy, so I'd say in both of these cases we shouldn't demonize these individuals or dismiss their experiences. Sure, we can critique them and try to convince them to come to our side, but at the end of the day, material conditions and social context affect a lot. Just like those communities may rally around radical ideologies in response to their hardships, so do Southern and rural Americans, even if their struggles are not the same in comparison. I mean, nobody's bombing Alabama anytime soon. If we want to build real revolutionary power, it's crucial to approach these communities with genuine goodwill and avoid demonizing them. Engaging in open conversations and truly listening to their concerns can help bridge the gap a ton. By reaching out and addressing the issues that matter to working class people, we can foster a sense of solidarity that strengthens our movement and drives meaningful change. And also, for the third time, I'm not asking you to go to a KKK rally and try to debate them. Anyways, if you got this far, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which should be the cartel vid. I'm thinking of just stockpiling a lot of vids just so I can have that in the back so I'm not rushing myself a lot. So yeah, thank you for all the support, and if you like this video or I changed your mind on something, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.